actual trading journal, which what I think I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna do a separate tab where I just put like key observations that I've seen through trading. But how is the quality for you guys? Can you guys see like fine? Can you guys see the numbers and the letters and everything?
Yeah, it looks very good for me.
No, I'm still streaming. Did it disappear for you? Quality system, yes, resolution.
The player to another window. Popped out the player to another window.
Oh, you popped it out. So if you do like an Alt tab, you might be able to see it. So usually what happens is when you do that, it pops the player out for the stream into a separate window, aside of your separate from your Discord application. Can you see it now? It'll probably be behind your Discord app. You'll have opened it up in a separate window. It's just a feature that Discord allows you to do.
Can you remind me again how to make it the full screen? You can put a little square at the bottom right, full screen.
Yeah, bottom right, full screen, and then once it goes there, you'll want to click the arrow where it says hide members so that you can't see anyone else's like picture or screen, and then it should populate it on your entire window. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, how is the resolution? Can you read everything fine? All right. so I already showed you guys this before. I think that this has been up for a while. I mean, it's really just kind of what I did last time. Except what I did was I separated it by accounts now. It was kind of getting a lot to be in a single page. So, like my template, this is where I would come to like change if I wanted to change anything. It's also the formatting as well. So like I automatically have it so where like for example, if I have quantity here and I change 10 and I change 10 here, but then I do like I don't know 250. Right, and if it's a red, it'll automatically color it as such. And then if I go like I don't know 450, it'll color it green automatically for me. So it's part of the formatting. It's kind of finicky, so I just separated it. But I'm just kind of taking you guys through this. If you guys would like to use something similar, please feel free to do so. This is uploaded on the other Discord's option thing. I created another folder within that. So the one thing I added was a YTD accurate and YTD inaccuracy, and then total trade accuracy. So you guys will see it'll count them up and then it'll give me numbers. And what I plan on doing is on this left corner over here, I'm gonna actually add the expectancy little chart that I has mastered. So, more to follow on that. I had finished this product Friday, so I didn't get a chance to add it. But anyway, so to how I've been doing, right? Now I got to copy the blank template again, but so this is how many trades I've done in the last. I've done more, but I really started historically keeping track of everything 28 March. So that's 4 weeks ago. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. And as you can see, I haven't been as active. Like for example, like on this week, I was less active, and I think it was just because like life, and I think I was getting ready to like start trading with real money, so I wasn't focusing on the paper account, which was a mistake. So as you can see, the following week, I was like, all right, let's time to go back to paper trading. But overall, in the last 5 weeks, I started with 5,000, and I am now at this is paper trading account, right? Doesn't look as good on my real money account, especially because I've only been doing it for like 6 days total. But overall account is 9,608. So the overall account change is I actually don't have the one from the beginning because this is on a weekly basis. So from the beginning of last week, I was at 8,300. Ended up at 9,600 at 50% overall profit. Key thing to note is to note is if you notice the no wait, where is it? Yeah, the P&L. So the P&L, this is one of the things where I'm like, I'm very strictly like sticking to the plan. That's why you'll see a lot of red here, and you'll be like, oh, that's a lot of red. Like obviously something's not working out, But it kind of how Thai strategy is, it's a 50%, like flat, like 50% like wins, 50% losses, but the wins outweigh the losses. So it's kind of like a similar thing going on for me. As you can see, all the losses I cap at typically. So my goal, and again, this was trades that I made at the beginning of April, and it's been evolving. But typically, what I've been trying to do now is cap all my losses at 5 to 6%. And as you can see here, I had a couple of losses at 10%. And that's really this. I think if it goes beyond 5% or 6%, it's because I didn't set a bracket order, and I was just kind of like, oh, it's gonna come back, and then it didn't, and then it hits 10% loss, and I'm like, I should really style it in. So typically that's what happens whenever you see like a higher level. Like for example, like this one minus -3%. I mean, I think I just panicked there, right? It's like, oh, it's going down, sell, and then LS. But for the most part, a lot of the wins, I try to aim for 10%. This 19.71% here is unusual. I'm sure that I got like that one. I can say that wasn't analysis. I'm sure I was just like YOLOing that trade, and it just happened to go my way. But that's not something that I'm looking for. Here, this is honestly a better example, right? So 11, 12, 13, 9. I'm pretty sure all of these are bracket orders where I literally just set it and forgot about it, came back at the end of the day, and was ready to either take a 5% loss or a 10% win. Which, and as you can see, I did a trade pretty much 4 days out of that week, and they were all positive. And again, 5, 10%, or 10%, give or take. So really good profit there. Then I had this week, which was complete shit. And then I went backwards, you know what I mean? But this is actually the perfect example, the counter example of this green week. All my losses here, 5%, 5%, 5%, 5%, right? Give or take. Again, right? Yeah, I had a week where I had 4 losses, big hit, but because I stuck my 5% one trade per day strategy, I was able to mitigate my losses. So even though this week was terrible for me, I mean overall I was still up 900 for the count, right? So then we came back up here. Here it was where I really.
Leo, alright, then we just go back up to the buy to open. You had 5.17. What is your strategy? Did you take it at 10% or better?
So where exactly at?
Oh, I'm just wondering, the one right in the middle of the screen where you buy to open, and I think you had 5.17. Yeah, that one.
Okay.
The only green one there. So is your strategy to take profits at 10%?
Yes. Yeah.
So there you have it at 5. So was that you just decided to take it early?
Yes. Yeah. So I think I was kind of, and that's why and I've told Ty this before. Like my weakness, my biggest flaw, self-knowledge, is psychology. Like I become emotionally compromised, and not just emotionally compromised through loss, but also through wins, because I'll start getting greedy, and I'll start becoming arrogant, or I'll start getting anxious and panicky, and then overeager, and so either way is bad. And I think what happened here was I had 2 bad trades, right? And I'm sure I was upset. Came back the next day, saw a 5% profit, and I was probably in the mentality of like, you know what? I'm gonna count my blessings. I'm gonna take this 5% and just call it a day. And I think that's probably what happened. That's probably it looks, from looking at it and kind of like knowing my own mental state, like that's probably what happened. Was I'm gonna take this 5%. Could go up, could go down. I don't care. In this moment, I know it's 5%, and I'm gonna take it. And so I took it.
Do you go back later and see whether if you had to stuck to your 10% rule, whether it would have worked out? Just out of curiosity.
I don't remember, because this was good. I've made so many trades since then. But would that be something that I would do now? It's hard not to, because I'm consistently looking at the chart. right throughout the day, every day, even if it's just like a peak or whatever. But
That's just something Eric told me to do. Like, if I get out early, I could still look at it to see what would have happened if I had not made that decision and had made a different decision. Like, I
yeah,
needed more data.
and I mean no, and so yes, but then if you look at the opposite side of that, um, so given the fact that right, like I acknowledge that being emotionally compromised is probably like my biggest weakness, but what I want to prevent from happening is getting into that mentality of like, well, that one time, it would have worked out for you. So then the next time, rather than taking the 5% win, I could have been like, well, last time it worked out, so I'll just let this one run. And I think that's the mentality that I'm really trying to prevent myself from getting into is thinking, well, I followed it last time, and that's what could have happened, and get stuck in like what would have, should have happened, right? As opposed to just being in the moment and looking at the facts that are present in that moment. I think that's kind of so. Like, if you were to ask me, would you do that now? Like, I probably wouldn't do that now. Like, I would just take that 5% win and call it a day. And I have the tendency to just close the app for that day, at least for the trading day, right? And then I would reopen it like maybe afterwards. But I want to mitigate any sort of overthinking on my part.
Yeah.
Because like I said, that's something that I would easily be like, maybe this 5%, I take the profit of 5%, and then I see that I could have gotten 50% profit, and then somewhere in me I'm like, maybe it's not too late, I can still hop in. And that's when it just, and so now it's like, oh man, like why did I do that? I should have just. So, but I do get what you're saying. But personally,
You
I
did
just
really
try to stay
great.
away from that.
Well, you did really great because, like you said, the red one, you got out like with like less than 50%. You got out at 5% each one.
Yeah.
It's great. Because sometimes
Yeah,
you
and
want
so
to
this is
both losers, right? But you got out, which is excellent.
Yeah, and I think this is the perfect example of like a good red week for me, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like, hey, it was a red week, but it was a manageable red week. It was within the expected margins of loss, right? It wasn't like, oh my god, I just blew up my account. This was like, hey, this is expected. I'm gonna have red weeks, red days, and it's within what I anticipated. And so this, looking back, and I was as I was filling out the data because I like all this stuff is new. I hadn't filled this out. I hadn't actually been keeping up with my journal. Wow, I don't know about the last one. Go.
Um, I do have a question, maybe a few, but so by the looks of it, this trade log is you're mainly doing calls. I see the few puts in there, but you're doing intraday trading, correct?
That's the goal, yes. And you'll see in there that sometimes I'll have held for a day or two.
Mm-hmm.
But that is not what my strategy is supposed to be. It's just that, like I said, sometimes I'll be like, well, I'll buy something at the end of the day, and like maybe I'll get something in the morning. But
Yeah.
that's less analysis and more, maybe I'll get lucky kind of thing. So that's not the point of the strategy.
Yeah, it kind of goes from like a followed plan to more speculation and just like hopeful, like
Yeah.
hopium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and I think I get really confident because I'll see because I'm so active, especially on the spy chart. Like I'm so active at literally like I've been looking at it every single day this month. Where I can start seeing like the previous highs, the lows, the resistances, the supports, and if it makes a certain push in a certain direction, I'm like, oh, like I feel really confident that if I buy, at late in the afternoon and in the morning, it'll do this or that because oftentimes SPY will close at a given price and then open $5 in either direction.
mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
It'll just do like some ridiculous movements overnight for an index fund.
What
But I shouldn't be doing that.
so what are you trying to get out of this trade log? Like, are there any specific like questions that you're trying to answer by using all of this information? And then a follow on for that for me is what metrics are you following in this? I mean, is this all of the information that you think that you need whenever you're tracking these trades, or do you feel like you're maybe lacking in some areas?
Yeah, it's a little different. But yeah.
I'm gonna ask you a second question because that's the one I remember the most.
Yeah.
And then you can repeat the first one. I I think now that you're saying it, because it's supposed to be a journal specific to a strategy and less so of how the account performance is doing overall, I'm gonna add the delta values to this because the delta values are a big. Because I'll change delta values anywhere between 0.25 and 0.40. Um, and that kind of has to do with like the premium prices as well. But I can definitely add delta to the right of premium, and then that'll just give a better perspective, or a better, yeah, a better, perspective into kind of how I choose the trade, right? The premium. So yeah, okay. So delta, that makes sense. That way, it's not just like I said, not more of a how's the account performing, but how is the strategy performing? Is that kind of where you were like
Yeah,
one
yeah. That's
box
I
kind of?
Yeah, I would say more or less that's kind of the road that I'm walking down is, if you're trying to see if your strategy itself is profitable, what if any metrics would you be tracking to see if it is profitable? And then other than that, I think it just the first question, it was are there so do you have any like goals that you're trying to achieve by using this trade log? I mean, other clearly it's, if it's profitable or not, or how the account is doing, if that's profitable, but are there any other
Accuracy. So
accuracy?
accuracy was a big one for me, and I think that's why I focus on accuracy rather than like the actual. So I was focusing more on not the profitability of the strategy, but I guess the accuracy of it. Anticipating that if I was more like if I was 60% accurate, and then my wins were had a slightly better average than the losses, then that would lead to naturally being more profitable. So I was focusing more on like the accuracy aspect of it rather than just pure, like profitability, I guess.
Got you.
And that's why that was like a key part of kind of like how I, like the yellow boxes and stuff. Um, but and then also with what you shared, right? Like the expectancy, like I definitely am gonna add that to the left of like on the left in that white space, the actual expectancy and the probability, the R multiple, and what you were talking about. I got to look a little bit more into it, but I think that would also shed a little bit more light into the strategy, like specifically the strategy aspect of it,
Hmm.
and then improve kind of like what I can get from looking at the journal, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think, yeah. So off of your feedback, definitely gonna add delta, and then hopefully the next time I'll do one of these reviews will probably be like in a month or so, so I can collect more data. Um, I'll have the expectancy chart as well.
Yeah, man, and I'll help out wherever I can with that.
Right? I'm so confused on the R multiples. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it gets tricky. It gets tricky really quick. I saw that Peter put in the chat. What's the DTE on these trades?
So it's always 14, 15, 16. It's always one of those two. So, or one of those three. I try to find 14s, but sometimes, it's like either 13. I try not to go below 13, so it'll be either 14, 15, or 16, depending on what's, available. And that doesn't change.
Well, what, sorry, because I just more about, sorry, Ty, are you done? I just want to kind of,
Yeah, go. I have no agenda.
this is more sort of like a trading plan. Like, what you're using as, I heard you saying technical, like you're looking at sport resistance and everything else, like you're jumping right? Just wondering if it's just technical that you're using to determine, like, like the right
Yeah.
setup to get it.
Well, I mean, before I answer your question, I saw Brian get in and Brian leave. What's up? I don't even know how to say your name, man. Patah X.
Hey, how's it going? Not too much, just listening and seeing what you're saying. So.
Yeah, man. What I call you?
Pita X or Pita or whatever you like. It's all good.
Okay, X-Man.
Yeah.
You're an administrator, so we'll call you God in here, okay?
I just was open up to, or I've been running a Discord channel for a
Nice to meet you, man. Yeah, Ty, Dev, and we all met from one of Eric's like mentorship, like free mentorship sessions, and then we kind of had our own Discord and things. So really, really happy to be here, man. I was just telling the guys about kind of like my strategy. So I do a lot of intraday strategy, and then Dev, to answer your question, and also serve as an introduction to the times, is I focus on the Bollinger Bands, the RSI, and then the trend lines. So if you remember our meeting with James, is literally like he set the blueprint for kind of how I wanted to do it. So focusing on, like I said, the BBs, with I moved the standard deviation from 2 to 2.5 either direction. Everything else is the same. RSI, but I moved the RSI from 14 to 9, just to kind of get a little bit of more intraday reading rather than like a longer term reading. Everything else stayed the same, and then just trend lines, right? Trend lines, following support levels, resistance levels, and then just trying to using all of those indicators to try to make the best possible uh, educated guess as to what I think is going to happen. Given all of those things within the intraday, though, so it's really important to kind of for me to understand that there's going to be volatility within the day, even though perhaps like the overall monthly trend would be different from the intraday trend, right? Just because there's a lot of volatility intraday doesn't mean that the overall monthly trend isn't still positive or negative in either direction, right? But because I am trading intraday, I'm able to kind of make profit off of the volatility, intraday as well. So that's those are the indicators that I use. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So you always use the same, much the same sort of setup to use a technical to enter a trade, right? And
Yeah. So I look for what I've kind of over the last 2 months sort of personally fine-tuned to what I considered it's I would say like 2 different categories, right? Like one category could be said to be like prime indicators. I mean, everything's really lined up to what I've studied. The BBIs in the lower band, the RSI is oversold, the trend line is in support, the resistance level or the support level at which is like the lower one, that's in support. And I'm like, oh man, this is like everything lined up. This is beautiful prime entry condition, and I will enter that because if that's not enough to convince me to enter a trade, then my strategy literally means nothing. So like I will enter, like if that lines up for me, I will enter. I will immediately bracket my exit conditions, 5% loss, 10% win, and then just let it play out. And I'll either take the 5% loss or I'll take the 10% win. That's literally how that plays out for me for most of my trades. And that's and a lot of like that's why there's so much deviation here. Like you see 32% win, a 40% win is just I'm not sticking to my plan. And that's that's why I won't go ahead.
I'm just wondering if maybe you capture some of that information in like another column. I don't know that.
The BB and the RSI?
I don't know specifically. It has to be the BB and the RSI, but I know sometimes there's that you can capture your emotions sometimes when you're trading. I'm wondering, how you said there's a perfect setup? Maybe there's something where I'm just throwing out ideas here. Like maybe there's a scale, like from 1 to 5, where you think this is a perfect setup. This is a little bit less important. I don't know the granularity.
Okay, yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
I don't know the granularity of the details, but just to have another column. So when you look at that, you can say, oh look, every time I set up a trade, I notice that I'm getting more wins, or I notice that maybe I think it's a perfect setup, but look, most of the time it's not working out.
So I like what you're saying. You're saying a way to measure how I felt about that trade historically, right? So like a confidence scale. Because obviously it's like measuring the BB and the RSI for that given moment would be kind of hard. But if I were to say, taking all the indicators that I used, how confident was I in this trade in that given moment, and did that confidence play out, right? And I think that. Yeah. Okay. I think
helpful for you or not, but it just gives you more.
No, I think that's a great fucking idea. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, yeah.
I noticed that you place a lot of you place a lot of importance on that, whether the things are lining up perfectly or not, like all of your indicators are lining perfectly. So if that's something that's important for you, you have something you want to continue.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Ty.
I was just gonna say, I agree with that because if you're placing a real heavy importance on that or those factors and you won't go into a trade without those, personally feel like it would be important to either include that on your trade log or just, within your trading plan to say, once this criteria, or sort of like a checklist, like on your trade log, like you would have it and that box is something you would check off, or you would have that confidence level, number in within the range or whatever. And you would have just one more bit of one sort of a flag to check off, or a box to check off before you place the trade. And then you would have something to provide you with information looking back on it to say, yeah, this trade met all of my criteria for the technical analysis. That's another reason why I placed this trade. So, I feel like that would be important to include.
Would you say then rather?
And sometimes when you're speculative, you could just say, you know what, this was really low in terms of satisfying my criteria, but you can tell just looking at that, that it was a 1 out of 5. It wasn't a very high confidence, but maybe it was a speculative.
Okay, so I'm hearing two ideas. One, the confidence scale, which I think would be easier to implement, probably on a scale of like 1 to 3. How confident are you? Being 3 being like everything's lined up, pitch perfect. 2 being very confident but not like perfect, and then 1 being this is kind of like a regular trade where I'm like I see the signs but I'm not necessarily like very confident. Would you guys say like 1 to 3 scale would be? What should I think that be? What do you guys think?
I feel like I can't tell you that. It's kind of something like you just have to figure out what
Exactly.
gives you information. Like, what information do you want out of this, and what's going to get that information for you? You have to figure out yourself.
Yeah.
And then Tanya, your idea. So you were saying, and I think it would have to be either one or the other. So, actually, maybe it could be both.
You could put it with your indicators as well, right? So you can set it up as like, I don't know, I forgot your indicators, but if RSI is an example and MACD are, if MACD is crossing up and RSI is oversold below say 20, that would be 2 checks, right? It's an option. I don't try.
Have like a checklist to the right of the actual, so like an indicator section where it could be like, hey, out of your 3-4 indicators, how many check boxes were ticked for this trade?
Yeah, and then you've got to consider your time frames too. Like, I don't know how long you've been day trading for, but if, like for me, I know the weekly, the daily, the 1 hour, the 30-minute, and then the 15 is typically what I trade off of, and then I'm entering on the 5 or the 3-minute, sometimes the 1, depending on how fast things are moving, normally what I'll do is I'll exit on the 15 or the 30-minute. So I'm kind of watching a bunch of time frames, and I use VWAP, which covers all of the time frames, usually a 2-day look back on it, and that helps me a lot. Plus, I usually try and watch my pre-market open and close, so your pre-market range basically, right? And those tend to work out as lines of resistance on the chart as well once you get a little longer term with it. Just, I don't know if you're looking for suggestions in that or not, but.
Oh yeah, no, that's literally the point of this, is for you guys to be like, hey, I think this would also help, or maybe this or that. I'm writing all of this stuff down.
Yeah, like other things. So I've been day trading forever, but the other things that I tend to do, I went from RSI to slow stow, because RSI, what happens is you get overbought and oversold, but it doesn't really have an upper or lower limit. So you can sit and overbought forever, right? You can sit and oversold forever.
Yeah, and then it'll start acclimating. So then the price won't really compensate, but then the RSI will slowly start kind of leveling out, and you're like, wow, this literally told me nothing.
Yeah, so take a look at it. It works the exact same way, but take a look at like slow stoichiometry, right? And it pretty much maxes out in minimum. It goes between 0 and 100, and I found it's a little clearer for me, and I can give you the settings.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna look into this throughout the week. Probably not tonight, but I made a note of it. Slow. You said slow tachyometry, right?
So yeah, STOCH, whatever. Yeah, I can never spell it. But.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then VWAP is definitely worth your time because VWAP is what your hedge funds and everything are using, right? So if you look at it, like it's volume weighted average basically.
Yeah, I used to use the VWAP, and I guess I just moved away from it in favor of the RSI.
Yeah.
But maybe that was a mistake.
Well, no, I mean, whatever's working, right? A lot of of my peers, my friends, a lot of them use Heikin-Ashi charts, and they're very easy to see if you're newer. And trade off of that. So I don't know if you're using TradingView, but you can flip it across on the candles up on the top there, and you'll see it just literally goes from green candles to red candles. I don't use it, but it's more because I'm so accustomed to looking at candles now. I don't. It's just a change I don't need, but yeah, I don't know, little things that help me. Like the multiple time frames are a big factor too for me. Like,
Go ahead.
Oh, I used to get myopic. I'd be in like, 1 or 2 time frames, and then you stop realizing when you're coming towards, say, a daily resistance or a weekly resistance line, and that can kill you in a second, especially if you're into like forex or larger markets. So.
Yeah.
Would you consider maybe tracking the time you have in a trade, whether that affects your profitability or not? Because I know, like for me, and I mean, I don't intraday trade just as of yet, but for my trades, I like to track how many days that I've been in the trade.
Days in trade, yeah.
Yeah, and
I don't. I mean, so from my experience, and you can see, like, I actually have the time I entered and exited,
mhm.
and but that's about as far as I have as far as tracking it. It's not. There's no like calculation beyond that, like measuring the averages or actually calculating how much time is spent on each trade. And I think because I'm not. So my ideal strategy, I'm really not holding on to any given trade for more than kind of what X was saying, more than like 30 minutes. I really, and for me, it's even less than that. I find it that a lot of times when I stick to my strategy and I enter and I immediately set my bracket conditions with my my 5% loss and my 10% win, a lot of time that will trigger one way or the other within 10 to 20 minutes.
Gotcha.
And so I think that once if I were to start adding variations to how long I hold it, I feel like I start getting away from my strategy where I'm no longer trying to like ride that anticipation, and it's more about a little bit long-term analysis, maybe. I don't know. Am I explaining that right? I get what you're saying, and I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, I kind of hear what you're saying. You don't want sort of to put stuff in that might influence your strategy in the long, like take you away from your strategy. Is that what you're saying?
No. The strategy needs to evolve if it's going to be. It's going to be good. I'm definitely open to evolving it. I'm just saying. I think time is like so. It's less dependent on time and more dependent on the bracket, right? Like the bracket order type. So like as soon as I enter a strategy, I'm entering the strategy because I already know what my exit conditions are going to be. So I immediately set my bracket conditions. Like, and that's kind of part of the reason. So that's a big part of the strategy too. Is I'm not looking let it ride for potential profits. I'm looking to get the breadcrumbs, right? Like I want to get take the 5% loss and take the 7% win. In some cases, if I've been having a bad week, I'll just take the 5% win as well, right? So it's kind of, and I feel like that's less dependent on the time and just more dependent on the analysis itself. Because if I enter a trade, I already know or I already have an idea of what I think is going to happen. So there's no need for me to really even look at the chart anymore. I just enter the trade and then I'll enter and then I'll enter the bracket condition. So either way, my exit condition, good or bad, is going to get triggered. Does that make sense?
So I'm curious how you came up with 5%, 10%. Is that just kind of a number you just like arbitrarily?
So that was actually no. So it was through trial and error. It was
Okay.
it was through the power of the paper trading account.
Oh.
I was yeah, because I actually started off with much bigger numbers. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, my screen's just blacked out. I don't
So
know
you've
what happened.
already optimized it a little bit by
A little bit.
numbers. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the percentage wise, I actually started off with 10% loss, 20% wins, and based off of and those were just random numbers that I picked. I was like,
Yeah,
well, let's see how it works with this, right? Yeah, and I was trading a lot, I was making a lot of, and this was prior to, because again, I started, when I started paper trading was when we actually made the Discord, and that's when you guys, I was like, yeah, I gotta make my TD Ameritrade account, I gotta, my paper, never really paper traded before, and so I went ham. I mean, I was tweaking so many things, and so one of those things was I would never hit I would never hit the 20% target, the win target, like the profit target. I would never hit it. Like, okay, well maybe this is too high, right? And I would never hit it because of the expected movement. Right. Yeah. So the volatility intraday would never, especially within the time frame that I'm looking at. Like, okay, so the volatility within like a 30-minute time frame, usually the majority of time is not going to really net you a 20% profit. You know what I mean? And so I hadn't realized that, and so through the power of just fine tuning and trial and error and losing a lot of fake money, I was able to kind of tune that down to 10%. And so for a while it was 10% profit, 10% loss. And then I was like, okay, but this also doesn't make sense because I don't want my profit to be the same as like my loss. So then that's when my target's going to be 5% loss, 10% win. More often than not, it'll hit 10% profit, and then But what I'm noticing actually is I like the 5% loss, and I think I'm going to bring the profit down to like 8%, because I see a lot of times it go up to like 8 or 9%, and then it doesn't trigger, right? Because I've set the bracket condition. I don't look at it. I come back and I can see that I'm like, oh, I could have made 9%, and then it like tanked, went the other direction. So like the underlying asset did do what I thought it was gonna do. So I was correct. It's just that I wasn't correct in how far I thought it would have gone. Right. So the movement was correct, but not the volatility that I anticipated.
You can use ATR for that as well, like a multiple of ATR, average true range. And I used to use 1.6 on intraday, but it really depends on the volatility of the market, but it'll actually change depending on what's going on. So that helps with it too.
What is that? That's new. I have not heard that before.
It's average true range. But basically what it does is it's it almost encompasses volatility, right? So it's the typical range that you're moving on that stock in that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like standard deviation linear regression in a sense, but it's better to read up on it than listen to my lame version of it. But it does work if you use a multiple of it. So like in a typical situation, you're going to be within a 1 standard deviation, right? So you can pretty much go with 1.6, and if you go outside of that, well, something's changed, right?
Yeah.
Some people use different variations of it. That's one of the indicators that I still got on mine, but I don't really use it much. I find I've gone to more levels of resistance, like horizontal levels, and I'm looking for if I see a break of a certain level, and you've always got to think of what other traders are doing too.
Yeah.
Everybody and their dog is going to put a stop loss, as an example, right underneath the candle on, say the hourly chart, right?
Yeah.
And they always fish for that candle. So if you're looking for like a double bottom, aim lower than the second. Like, if you have a single double bottom, you think you're going to nail another one, aim lower on your stop on that second one, because typically they go lower. Try and collect the actual premium, or the, like basically squeeze it, right? And then it'll fire up, and we use that as for momentum to push it into the next level.
Mhm.
It's just little subtle shit. But
Yeah,
it goes
no,
a long
yeah.
way, right?
And
So would you say
that's one of the
that-
things that I was. Go ahead.
So would you say then that the volatility would maybe so would you say that then the volatility would maybe have you change your profit targets, like whether it's 8% or 10%? Does the volatility come into play?
Not as much the target, the targets, more the stop loss. So I'll put a bracket order in, but I typically will move, which is classically a bad habit, but I will move the stop loss depending on what I'm seeing, right? And I also trade by the time of day. So if I'm coming in, I won't trade the first 8 minutes of the market as an example, because if you over time you'll start to realize that you'll have a switch at for my time it's 6:30 when the market opens. So I'm 6:38 is when I'll start considering a trade, and then there's usually from 6:30 to about 7:45. I've got it written down. You'll see kind of a typical maneuver. Then it swings, and then you'll get another swing at 10 o'clock, and then you get power hour, which is the last hour of the market. Then your volatility starts to kick back in, right? So from 10 o'clock to say 12 o'clock my time, which is I think what is that? I don't know. I'm Pacific.
You're Pacific, yeah.
Yeah. You'll see basically a kind of a lull and typically a normal direction for that, and then around 11:30, say an hour and a half before it close, you start to see the volatility pick up again, and more traders coming back for the desks and everything else. So if you're just looking for smaller plays, you can go in there. If you're aiming for the volatility, that's great, but then you have to have larger stop losses, right?
Okay. It was just an idea that I was just trying to think of anything else that Theo might want to capture in his blog that could just help him tweak things a little bit more. I know he's kind of tweaking the 10%, 8% profit taking. I don't know if he wants to tweak his stop losses. I was just trying
Look
to
at delta. I would look at VIX. So whatever the underlying margin, so say the volatility of whatever index you're trading, right? So the VIX as an example, and you can, because if the VIX is at 30, the trading is going to be very different than if the VIX is at 20, right? So, or even 10. So you're 14 doesn't matter, but so you're going to get much larger swings, and honestly, the day trading is better when you get those big swings. Like once you get into summer, I don't know if you've traded for how long, Leo, but once you get in summer, a lot of the time, July, August is just dead. So when you take those trades, they just do nothing, right? So you're just paying fees, and they just sit there, and it's painful. Like I've actually been knocked out. Typically July, August, I just get killed every year when I was day trading. So you're always looking for volatility, which is a huge factor. So I do any earnings plays or things like that. Whereas now, I'm not really day trading that much anymore. But when I do, it's typically, I'm not really aiming for the high volatility stuff. I just want a nice, easy, smooth play where I pick up a little bit of profit and then walk away. And I've also learned to keep my plays super small. Like a max loss for me is 2% of my account, because I've had things like I've blown out accounts twice now, as an example, thinking, I'm safe, and then all of a sudden, your margin called, shit like that, right? So, yeah.
I was having the exact same conversation with Ty about, and this is kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier, Dev. Like, that's why the mental aspect of this is I stress that so much for myself, because I do not want to get a false sense of safety and then blow out my account like I have in the past, where I'm like, but like this and that, and next thing you know, I'm at 30, and I'm like, I'm at 30, might as well hold, and now I'm at 60, and I'm like, fuck it, at this point, now I'm at 90, and I'm like, all right, well, this is happening,
Right.
Yeah. I divide my plays, right? Like, so if I'm day trading, I'm anal. I'm not, like, if I don't care if it goes $2,000 past my stop, I'm out. But if I'm trading, say, options or stocks, and I usually do a lot of due diligence on them, so I kind of have a rough idea of what I feel they're worth. So on those, if they're undervalued, I'll typically hold and then try and defend the position. So I have probably 4 different systems that I trade with, but trading plans, I know Eric's big on that, but I'm kind of just do what I've always done, and I make money, so I don't worry about it that much.
Yeah, gotcha. Guys, this has been. I don't want to take any more of you guys' time. It's, I really thought this was only going to go for 3 minutes, but I got a lot of good notes. And I really feel like the purpose of the lesson was fulfilled, at least from my perspective.
Sorry, I just
Go ahead.
sure you call it what PETA?
Yeah, PETA.
What PETA said about the VIX, like that might be something you want to report of what the VIX is.
Yeah, I got a note of that, and I think you guys. Yeah, no, I love taking notes. You guys remember that's how we.
Yes, that's right.
Anybody wanted the notes?
And talk to Reek Savick. He just came into your group here, but he's a very good day trader. He's in the AJ candles, but he's worth talking to for sure. He's actually better than I am by far. So.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and I plan on probably coming back doing this again, or asking you guys to help me out with this in a month again, so where I can collect more data. And I plan to have, so my goals are going to be add the expectancy chart. I'm going to add technical indicators as well to this, because right now it's more of an account review rather than a strategy review, and I appreciate you pointing that out, Ty. So I also want to be able to tailor that more specifically to not just the account, but okay, like how, what are you doing? So thank you guys again. Any other feedback?
No, nice to meet you guys. That was cool. Interesting.
Yeah, man. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. If you want to keep the momentum going, we can try to go for this again next Sunday night.
I'm flying to Korea tomorrow morning, so.
Whew, yeah, maybe not.
I like to take my time with data and stuff. I will be on. I just don't know if I want to do like a strategy review for what I'm doing.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be this exactly.
I would try volunteering my strategy review.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do it. And I mean,
We're trying to do with the trading plan and the bond. So
yeah, and I mean, like off of Eric's, well, not even Eric's, our last meet that we had with Eric in the teaching to trade, the whole community aspect of it, it's pretty important for me as well. And if I don't have, like, if I'm not feeling like I'm holding myself accountable by, at least meeting once a week or at least trying to be active, like inside of this community, then I know I won't hold myself accountable outside of that and apply that to my trading. So, if I can push myself to, just at least somewhat coordinate and get in the call, once a week. And that's, I mean, it doesn't have to be anything, like we have to have these 3 objectives done by next Sunday. No, I mean, it's like, if we're just in the call and we're like saying, like me and Leo, we try to do it often, but we'll jump in like, hey, how's the week going? Like, how have you been doing? Or like, what are some new things you're looking at? So I know for me, it gives me more accountability, more, drive, I guess, to further myself in my own trading. So there's that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm down. I thought you meant like doing this next Sunday, like for this specific. I'm like, it's too much pressure, man.
Yeah, dude, believe me.
If we just coming on just to like chat and discuss just general market, behavior and anything, I'm game, dude. And I'm on here all the time anyway, so.
Yeah,
for sure.
same.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm usually a lifer as well. So anyway, but good to meet you guys.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, guys. Alrighty, I'm not off as well.
I gotta
Thank you so much, guys. Again, seriously, I'm really happy I met you guys through Eric and part of this community. So.
Yeah, man.
Alright, guys.
Okay, thanks, guys.
See ya. Okay.